Take it away.
Yes, I will share my screen. So it will be a little bit of the vertigo thing going on, but let's see if this all works fine. There we go. And normally, if my computer's not freezing, there we go. So good evening, or good day, everywhere if you are somewhere not in Belgium and in different time zone. So I'm Nico Potvin. I'm one of the partners here at Cannes, and I focus on everything that has to do with digital products and also everything that has to do with brand tech. Today, I would like to talk to you about some experience that we had on how to handle crazy ideas and make sure that they can be built or that they can be brought to a working MVP. It's a little bit of a recipe, meaning that it's an approach. It's something that you can use, but as with any recipe, you are completely free to add something, change something, add something more, or leave something out depending on whatever you are experiencing and whatever project you are working on. So completely free to do this. And at the end, you will probably have something to move forward. It's the same as with any recipe. If you would compare it to a burger, everybody loves burgers. You can leave stuff out. It will all work fine. Maybe I can explain very short a little thing about Cannes Design and what we do. We focus on branding and everything that has to do with brands. Branding is very important in everything that we've done. And we work on the brands of tomorrow. So we want to make sure that everybody can not only work today, but also work in the future and is ready for it. We do 4 major things. First of all, we develop distinctive brands, meaning that if you have any question on your brand basics, we're here happy to help. Secondly, we can build inspiring experiences that can completely connect to your audience. So we want to make sure that everything fits. Then we also build smart tools, not only for our customers, but also for ourselves to make sure that you can have digital brand transformation within your company. And we also help other companies to reinvent their own brands or any project they might have. We've been doing this for quite some time, so almost 30 years in the business, and we are a multidisciplinary team, 20 designers, and located here in the heart of Antwerp, as Annie has mentioned, but we also have an office in New York and Chicago, depending on some of our US-based customers, where we help them making sure that they can that they get serviced very well. And besides our own, we're also founding member of Hybrio, which is a platform where we can have, well, a connection with other companies that think the same, so that we can make sure that we can do the complete process of service design, interaction design, identity design, manufacturing, and so on. We work with all kinds of customers, startups, scale-ups, but also grown-ups. So any company, any organization, anything that would like to talk to us, we're always open. We work for everybody. And it's been, well, if you look at the UX side, we've helped with building the Bebo's website, or building software to do football live streaming and making sure that it's captured correctly, or building loyalty brands, and also everything that has to do with the application itself, or help a startup making sure that you can visit any building or any meeting room that you might have. And again, not only we do not only help our customers, but we also have built our own products. 2 of them, one is Cadenza, which is smart tools for strong brands. And another one is Zizo, where we connect elderly with the digital world. And we also won an Henry van de Velde Award for this product. So that means that we have, well, not only building applications, we've also went through a lot of those steps to make sure that you can bring something to the market and that you can build a product where you can be proud of and that fits everything that you would like to envision in there. Before I get into MVP, I just want to get one thing cleared, and this is something that you can also take with you to your clients. There's a difference between POC and MVP. We get a lot of questions where customers ask, for example, yeah, can we build a quick POC out of it? And then we'll put that online and then we'll see what happens. In short, the answer should be no. Why? Because a couple of things. A POC is only temporary and it goes into the bin, meaning it is very good for validating any concept you might have and checking it with an audience. So if you have a UX feel or a flow you would like to test, build a POC, check it, learn from it, and tweak whatever you would like to have. Or if you want to check something from a business side, will people work with this app or not, or with this application or with this service? Build a POC, check it, and then see what needs to be done later on. That's a POC. An MVP, it's a big difference, goes into the store. An MVP is for validating a complete business model. Not only if a flow will work, not only if something is technically feasible, but also something that can be sold, being it for an email address, being it for a service, being it for money, whatever. An MVP is complete. It needs to work. It needs to work completely from A to Z. So from onboarding to offboarding. Everything needs to be in there and it needs to be a valid product. And it needs to be something where you are proud of and something that you can take with you into the stores to customers. Ask them, you can play with it yourself or you can send them a demo, whatever. That's an MVP. It's the first version of your whatever you're building, which is production ready and that you can sell to customers. That's a big difference. So what I would like to share with you today is a little bit of what our ideal approach is. And that is something that we compiled out of different methodologies that we've used in the past. And every project is always a little bit different, but the approach is more or less applicable to any project you might have. And there are always different kinds of projects. One could be an idea. There might be an idea, somebody has an idea and it needs to be built into a product or an existing product that needs to be reworked because it needs to work better or there is a specific issue with it. All those things can be worked on with this process. And this process is not something especially for you, but this is a process that you can teach your customers as well, so that they can also align with the way that you are thinking and that you can bring everything together to market, combined. So let's start with the first step. The first step is pretty easy. It's somebody or a team that has an idea. So there's that Eureka moment where they have a specific idea and they would absolutely like to share it and build a product out of it. So what do we usually do? You start discussing and you start debating on how to handle this. And what we like to do is we like to split the process up, going from a vague idea to an MVP, something that you can work on, that can be developed, that can be ready. So we'd like to split that up into two major aspects. The first is kicking it off, having workshops together with the customer and discussing on how you can diverge, how you can go wide. So you already have a little bit of an idea where it can go, but you need to look at what is on the table and which direction it can flow. It can, and everything is possible. So you need to think of this idea. What can it do? What can it do for a customer? What can it do for the business? What can it do for all kinds of elements within that system and within that idea? Second part is taking everything together and all the learnings that you might have, review that together with the customer, and then decide on how that we can focus to delivering an MVP, a briefing, a start, user stories, whatever screens, whatever that you need to a dev team so that you can move really fast and get things going to start building that MVP. From how do you tackle a good MVP? If you have a discussion with your customer, always think of a good balance. An MVP is not only nice screens, good copy, something that works. No, it's a balance. It's a balance that need to be found in different areas, because otherwise it will be too focused on something and not entirely complete. And it needs to be balanced on different levels. The first one is it needs to be likable. And likable means it needs to be something that people believe and that looks and works very well. So if you look at likable, because we have the branding background, always think that UX itself is not enough. The brand needs to be there as well. You need to have a combination of how you will, what your tone of voice is, what the actions are, how it looks, how it feels. That's all within the brand. And the brand needs to align with value propositions, with the personas that you have, with the tone of voice, with your brand persona, something I will get into. So that is all aligned. That's the first thing. Secondly, it needs to be viable. And this is something that you need to take control of if you are in that position where you need to help the customer to move towards a good MVP and how it can be built. You need to make sure that the business is also valid, that you take them with you, and that you can always compare if those business rules are also always met. Third, it needs to be feasible. Feasible means it needs to be able to use a technology that was maybe already researched, or technology that is not existing, or technology that is not aware of, or technology where you do everything from scratch. This all needs to be taken into account, and it needs to be equal within the MVP process. So the ideal dream team to get from crazy idea to good MVP is combining not only good UX and good branding, but also business people and also development, dev teams or dev architects. We always encourage and we always make sure that our team is combining of at least the branding, the UX, and then the development side, because the business is usually the customer itself. But sometimes we also take somebody with us to check and do some service design, for example, to make sure that the business is also viable. So that's the first step. This is the balance that we need to make sure that is kept. And not only do we start with this and explain it to it, but we always like to know everything that has to do with the brand itself, even if it doesn't exist. Why? Because it is very important that we get to know the customer, also get to know how they think, how they look at the world, to make sure that the project itself is aligning with the company. Otherwise, it will not always be authentic. It will not always follow the specific way that they are talking. So if you look at the schematic, it's a very simplified screen. We have a lot of more in-depth versions of this, but it has to do with the three columns. First, you have the right-hand side and the left-hand side. The right-hand side is everything that has to do, which is a little bit more fluffy, a little bit more on the emotional side. The left-hand side is everything that has to be more rational, that has to do with how it has been, how the word looks, things that you can easily see. And the middle is the way how we would like to look at everything. So if you would look at our screen, you start at the bottom, you would go up and then through the middle to building something. So we always start with trying to get to know the customer and talking a little bit about their purpose. And most of the times, everybody knows their purpose. And the purpose is, why did you start this besides money or besides hard cash? We want to know why they are here on the world and why they want to do this. Secondly, we compare that with the logical side and we ask them, what's the play field? What's your environment that you're working in? What are your competition? What are your partners maybe? And what might be your comparables? So how do you compare? Are there others in the business or in the world that do something similar to you? Secondly, we move one level up and then we go to the pride. And pride is, what are we trying to sell? What are we trying to deliver to our personas, our end customers, our internal people, our partners, influencers, whatever that may be, the typical persona thing. And pride, it means whatever you have, being it services, being it a product, being it a heritage, whatever that you try to combine and put into the world is what you are made for. And then we move one level up, and then it goes a little bit more into the branding. It's important that we combine everything because we want to make sure that if you decide on the branding, the entire branding is also feelable within the application at any given time. So if you're talking about personality, personality has to do with how do you behave? What's your personality as a company or as a service or as a startup or other elements? Personality means, are you more like a Mother Teresa or more like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example? Proposition is on the other side, and that has to do with user-centered value propositions. As you all might know already, if you look at user-centered design, or if you look at customer first, whatever that you would like to call it, the typical thing of USPs is moving away. It's more or less, why am I better? That's something which is just not resonating anymore with your audience and with the people that you're trying to persuade. So you need to come up with the value. What's the value for my persona at that given time in my customer journey, for example? What's the pain I'm trying to relieve? And these, of course, are all discussions, workshops. A lot of those things are already in place, but it's important to know and to take the customer with you so that they also know and put that a little bit more on paper, and it's just one sheet, something that they can always have handy. So if there's anything that they would like to communicate or they would like to build, Does it match up with the values, with the proposition? Does it match up with a specific value for that persona, and so on? So this is very important that you can take that with you, with the customer, so that you can position the application correctly, also against competitions, what makes you unique, and so on. Next, another very important step, and I cannot stress this more. This is something that you might know, but not every customer knows this. It's completely normal that everybody thinks as an end solution. As a solution, so for example, you're going to build a car. So how do you build a car? You look at the engine, you look at the drivetrain, you look at the bodywork, and then you look at the interior, and there we go, we have a car. So what it's more or less the case now is that we, in an MVP process, is that we want to do this completely differently. And that is something that you might already know. It's the typical thing, don't start with the car, but start with the skateboard. Why am I explaining this? Well, because it's not always that obvious for an entire organization to be aware of this. Everybody thinks about solution and they're already biased. They already think, well, we need to build a car. But that's not the thing that you're trying to build. You're trying to be staying true to the original question, which is not building a car, but it's getting from A to B. A skateboard will do this. A skateboard will have the combination of it's something that people will like because it fits the brand and how we make it look. It's something which is viable because it will solve something and we can already move forward and see and learn from it and then adapt. And it's also something which is feasible and something we can build rather quickly. So with the MVP, if you're having a discussion with your customer, always focus on what is something that we can publish, that we can build, that we can send out, learn from it, tweak, and then go to the next step. And the next step might be, well, I'm not that able to steer that easy, so let's build a bicycle. And then it looks like it takes too much time to bike, so let's put an engine in there. So now we have a motorcycle, but then I get wet, especially with this autumn weather that we have now. So then it would be good to be inside and then we can build a car. So it's always trying to move forward with incremental steps, but always delivering something. So that's a very important step. Another thing that we will also always discuss is the buy versus build. If you look at technology and it's something that you want to build within your application, do your research and always focus on what you're trying to deliver. If there's anything that you can buy off the shelf that fits in and does the job very well, then buy it. Why? Because it doesn't make sense if you need an application and you need authentication, especially GDPR compliant and privacy managed and so on. It's not something that you want to build yourself. There are a lot of applications and a lot of other middleware that you can use, that you can just buy, put into your application so that you don't need to build this completely yourself. That makes it a lot easier and that you can focus on the things that make you unique. Also, look at what you can, if there are any shortcuts that you might take, but beware, don't take the shortcuts and forget about it. No. Document the shortcuts, why you're taking them, and make sure that you, in your next rounds, development rounds, take care of them, that you don't build up a lot of technical debt that you then need to sort later on and need to fix in post. And something which is also very important, and you know this, but it's something that you need to talk to your customers about. The typical principle, you win some, you learn some. So it's Anything that gets pushed out and gets delivered as a functionality is always a win. But there might be a reality where that specific function or that feature is just not catching on. It's just something that isn't working. It's something that is not accepted by the audience. So it's a typical thing that you want to set up beforehand. Discuss together with client and with the customer. What are the goals? What do we want to put into the market that we can measure, that we know that that goal is met? And that could be this amount of users on the system, or this amount of product sold, or this amount of performance, or whatever. Those are typical goals that you can set. Secondly, discuss acceptance criteria. Discuss on what criteria need to be met to think of the MVP as completely a success. Something that you are absolutely sure of, that you can then build further upon, which is version 1.1, version 1.2, version 2 even, and so on. Something that you can really build on. And as always, never forget, failure is always an option. So it might be that you're working on something for a very long time, but always measure it, tweak it, release it, and repeat the entire process. It's important that you do that in those steps, because otherwise the product might get stale, or there's too much technical depth, or there's nothing much that it brings to the table that it will be more or less unique or fits together with the brand and the goals you're trying to achieve. So in a nutshell, if you combine all of this that I've just shown you, what we usually would like to do and what we discuss with the customer is this process. This is putting everything in more or less typical MVP-ish technical business sides talk. So if somebody has an idea, before the kickoff, we always try to do a project framing meeting where we can discuss what use cases they have in mind, what kind of customers they have, what the guidelines might be. So that's everything that has to do with brand related, which are existing insights, anything that they already research from a technical point of view. Secondly, when we move to that parenting part, we talk about the technical and design sprint, where we can do those workshops to define everything I've told you before, defining the functional platform cases, discussing the building blocks. What is something which is currently off the shelf available that you can buy and that you can build? What are the optimized integrations? What's the input and the output data that you might have? Define the data model together with the customer so that it can be, in different words, ubiquitous, which means that it's easy understandable for everybody. I hope that they really find another word for this, because it's a difficult word. Set the platform goals, look at all the customer journeys, look at the UX opportunities, and that's something that we know very well, that you know very well as well. Identify things that can improve, that we can do things a little bit differently that makes it unique. And also look at the high level branding value propositions. What is this bringing to the table so that everybody can enjoy from it? Second step, when you have everything dialed out, you need to focus on that specific MVP that you can start building and that you can start delivering to your end customers. Define the functional MVP cases. Look at the buy versus build architecture and choices that you've made. Look at the integrations and the data that you need to import, being it from an API, being it automatically via Excel files or manually by typing it over. Look at how the data itself will go in and out. Define that test data. It's very important because that's a typical thing that gets forgotten. You don't want to go live with bad data or data which is typically not real world scenario. Discuss the acceptance criteria. Look at the complete user flow and wireframes. Look at, don't try to build up a couple of screens. No, think about component design, atomic design principles, something that you also know, but explain to the customer what that means so that they can easily iterate on the different processes and move things around. And look at the end result, how it might look in screens, and maybe build up a working informal prototype. So the outcome of this process can be a complete MVP outline presentation that they, again, can either decide on this gets built and move into the typical sprint delivery and next steps, or that they can take higher up to discuss with their board or discuss with their management to see how it could benefit from this process. So we always like to look at this presentation being around 10 to 20 slides maximum. What is the design rationale? What are the screen mockups? What are the tech specs? And even things that they can start testing with a test audience. So if you would ask us how we would take any idea, it doesn't have to be crazy. All ideas are awesome. Take it to an MVP. This is what we always suggest with our end customers. And this also concludes a little bit of the talk that I wanted to give today. So if there are any questions, feel free to put them into the chat so that Annie and Babo can combine them together, and I'm happy to answer them later on. So there's only one thing that's here. So thank you and cheers, enjoy the beers, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to discuss further with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nico. That was a really fascinating